And as we approach the new year, 2023, it saddens me to say that the state of women hasn't really improved. There is still much suffering being experienced by... Look at Olive smiling.
No, I'm in agreement. Continue, please. Continue.
Tata Suhana is now just...
oh, gosh.
supporting the girl child. But anyway, ladies are continuing to have it rough. Even as we march towards progress, or so you'd think, or so you'd wish. It's quite astonishing that in certain parts of the world, women are still being denied the right to basic things such as education. Do you remember this lady called Malala?
Yes.
Who got a Nobel Peace Prize because she was basically an advocate for girl-child education.
Yes.
And the Taliban weren't too happy with her, and then they shot her, and she was wounded, severely wounded. She was shot in the head.
She was left for dead.
And she miraculously survived.
Yes.
I don't know what she's done since. I know she's I don't know, she's got been awarded scholarships and all that kind of stuff. I don't know if she's still an activist, but nonetheless.
She's still an activist. She has, I think, like 2 books out there.
So what I thought was, after that, the outrage surrounding the shooting of Malala, that now there would be a tidal wave of change in the mindset of people in that region of the world, and that the floodgates to girl child education would just burst open, and the girls would just be flocking to school, and all of the religious zealots that previously prevented this would be just relegated to the dustbin of history.
But the floodgates had opened up until the Americans left Afghanistan and the Taliban took back power.
And so that is why the situation has worsened for the girl child. In Afghanistan, the Taliban now have banned university education for women nationwide. So if you're a girl in Afghanistan, no university education for you.
Yes.
And this, of course, has provoked condemnation from the United States and also the United Nations because this is an assault on their human rights. In a letter issued to all government and private universities, the Minister for Higher Education, Neda Mohammed Nadeem, says, you are all informed to immediately implement the mentioned order of suspending education of females until further notice. The development is the opposite of the promise of a softer rule when the Taliban seized power last year. So, what are we to make of this? Most teenage girls across Afghanistan have already been banned from secondary school education, let alone university.
Yes.
Which obviously has already been limiting the intake of girls in university.
But now the ones that were already in university have also been told to stop going to school.
So now, why are they going backwards, do you think?
Well, the Taliban, to begin with, do not believe in Western education, and they do not believe in the education of the girl child. According to the Taliban, girls must be wives. That is the role that they were made for, not to go...
Okay, quick question, but don't be annoyed. Is that so bad?
Okay, Daddy Suhana, tell us. Would you want your daughter to go to university, to have a degree, to have a mind of her own, or you would want her to raise her and just turn her into someone's wife?
I would want her to grow up and find a serious, responsible man that can take care of her and their family.
But before she does that, what would you want for her?
You know, I kind of have departed from the kind of thinking that requires me to see success as only coming in the form of professional achievement or career achievement. Because I've seen far too many women who today have attained all of that and yet are quite unhappy in their personal lives. They still have things that are missing in their lives. And yet you will find the women who opted for a more traditional lifestyle having a lot of joy in caring for the family and caring for the children. And of course, that requires for her to have found a responsible and serious man. And so I think I'm more inclined to, and maybe it's too early to tell, she's still a baby, my daughter. But I think in terms of just allowing her the opportunity to make her own decision.
But you see here, these girls and women and young women are not being given the opportunity to, make choices. Because now that most of them have been even stopped from joining secondary school or continuing with secondary school, they're being married off at as early as 13 years of age or even younger.
But on the flip side,
I'm like, in as much as you're saying that women have found joy in traditional lifestyles, they still have being educated, having an education, even if you don't use it, is better than having none at all.
But on the flip side, aren't we moving towards an era where we're thinking of radically changing the way we view education?
Mm-hmm.
So even if, let's say, there's been a ban instituted on university education, that doesn't necessarily mean the end of education per se, right? Unless, for example, they're going to ban these girls from reading books at home, or they're going to ban these girls from going on YouTube and watching videos about how to build airplanes. I mean, they can still do all of this stuff.
You can still do all of that.
Do you know what I mean?
Stuff,
and already, and even, because I remember thinking, if I ever had a child, I remember flirting with the idea of even homeschooling, because I felt like the current education system was quite not so good. And
homeschooling is still education, Fatboy. That's not what you're getting.
No. But listen, okay, it only matters to the extent that you are seeking government accreditation, in which case you may fail to obtain that if
you do not have government accreditation, then you're not hireable. You can't work anyway. You can't prove.
But where, in what? Listen, look at the world you're living in now. Who gives a damn about degrees?
But this is the thing, Fatboy. There are still jobs you see on the internet every single day, and they have requirements. And the requirements say at least a degree, at least
have
a
I ever
high
asked
school
for
diploma.
anyone in this building for a degree?
But you're not the only employer out there. There are jobs where you actually need a degree. And if you say that people can homeschool, how many of these people, have you seen the situation of the Taliban, or rather of the Afghanistans? Because after so many years of war, thanks to the United States, but of course also thanks to the Taliban, these guys have been very poor, most of them. So they may not even have access to the homeschooling material. And also homeschooling means you, the parent, is also educated, right? Because you can't homeschool if you are illiterate.
So if you have, I don't know what the economy of Afghanistan is like now.
It is actually suffering because the international agencies gave them a condition that for them to get substantial aid, they need to, improve on the way they deal with human rights.
So something very interesting is going to happen in the world because the societies which prioritize women empowerment and girl education, they're suffering from tremendously low birth rates, below replacement. And it is estimated that in many of these countries, literally within a few years, they're going to slide into population decline. And some of them already have. In Japan, I think in the next 50 years, their population will decline significantly.
Actually, Japan recently started paying some young people, offered to give them money, about, I think, $3,000 for them to have children. But you see, given the rate, given the economy of the world, where it is standing right now, many people are saying that even that which the government is offering is not enough, because raising a child entails so much expenditure than one can even imagine.
And I feel like it's just an unfortunate vicious cycle, isn't it? Because part of why the cost of living is so high is because the labor force expanded. Because now you have more consumers. Now you've got men and women in the market competing for the same products and services. So of course the prices will go high. Whereas before, when you probably had fewer bread winners, the economy reflected that reality. And so think of it this way. I mean, a family could live on a salary of a single working father, and that family would have a nice bungalow, they'd have a car, they'd have 3-4 kids going to good schools. But of course, now even 2 working parents struggle to get even close to what our parents had.
Yeah, that's true. But like you said, the workforce expanded, and of course the population itself, there has been extensive population growth across the world. So in countries like Uganda, where every person that left the university in the 80s or 70s or even maybe early 90s was assured of getting a job, today it is totally different. So you may have a degree, but then the job you have, the money you're earning cannot take care of even yourself.
I always like seeing the flip side, and I believe in the idea that every dark cloud has a silver lining. You don't think that this can in some way mitigate some of the challenges of youth unemployment? Because what is
Because
causing
now
youth
boys will
unemployment?
have an education and
No,
girls won't.
no. What I mean is when the job market is flooded with degree holders, because now we are at the point of saturation of degrees. There's just too many degrees and too few jobs to give those degree holders.
So you're saying that, okay, take one section of the country, one half of the population out of this.
Out of the job
But how
market.
does it even, no, because it doesn't really work. No,
Boom, you just solved unemployment. Congratulations.
You have not because
Here's your Nobel Prize in economics.
No. You have not solved anything because let's say if it's a family that has only girls and the parents are now old and their girls are not educated, they cannot bring in any money, that family is going to grass because how are they going to survive? No jobs.
That's a good point. And I think in the past, what would normally happen is that, usually that problem was solved through polygamy. Because if you had 3 wives, chances are you'd somewhere along the way there'd be a boy at least.
Well, if you're a guy and you're always shooting exes, you're going to have girls even if you marry 10 women, because at the end of the day, it is you. The onus is on you to make sure that you make a boy.
Well, anyway, look, so obviously, I appreciate that you're not happy about this, and
because where we
it's
are
a bit of a
today-
setback.
Where we are today, there is no way a country can thrive. And I agree with the American Secretary of External Secretary. He said that a country cannot grow or thrive when half of its population is left behind. There is no way you can grow. You cannot thrive. But you see, the Taliban do not believe in educating girls. Not because educating girls is going to take away their jobs. It's because they are still in that frame of mind that believes that women are just made for the house, for childbearing, and of course to cook.
And in your opinion, this is a wrong perception.
It is wrong because if a boy has a right to education, then a girl should have a right to education. What happens after school, then that is a debate and discussion for another day. You can't just say, I will not educate you because you're a girl. Because for them, this is what they're saying. I will not educate you.
So they're being allowed
because
to.
you're a girl.
So they're being allowed to go up until high school.
No, they're not, because most of them have been pulled out of high school. So what's that, really? Imagine imagine a Uganda with girls that have not even finished P7. And in most countries...
Isn't that the Uganda we have?
And in most countries...
Girls
women,
and boys.
The population of women vis-a-vis that of men is usually higher. And the majority of your population... So you're going to have the majority of your population uneducated. And which times are those? And which country are you building?
But you see, that's the question. Like I mentioned earlier, the so-called modern countries are in decline now. And it's being flooded with immigrants from places like Afghanistan who have these values. So here's something interesting that's going to happen.
By decline, what do you mean?
What I mean is that
decline, birth rate, what do you mean?
Actually, on all fronts, birth rate, culturally, society-wise.
But are the economies growing or they're not?
Well, I think just watch the news. I mean, when the economy has ground to a halt, Japan has been in a recession for at least 30 years.
Is that largely because women are working or educated?
I feel like,
or
you see,
other
all
factors?
of these, what I think is that a lot of this stuff is interconnected. Do you know what I mean? It's probably not just one thing that causes these problems, but I think you have a chain of...
And I agree, there is a chain of
factors.
interconnected factors. So pulling girl children out of school is not going to solve anything.
Well, let me finish my point. So imagine a scenario in which, due to the fact that in these societies, the native populations, or I don't know if that's even a correct thing to say, basically like the white population in these Western countries, right? Their birth rates are plummeting. And meanwhile, they're opening their doors to mass immigration. And where are these immigrants coming from? They're coming from places like Pakistan, like Afghanistan, like Yemen, and places like that, and who hold these values. And so many of these in these migrant communities in the European cities, you find that they very much stick to these same values, where the woman will be at home, and with somewhere averaging between 7 to 8 children per household. Meanwhile, her Western counterpart has either one child or none, right? So what's going to happen is in the next 50 to 60 years, these people are going to outbreed the modern progressive host population, and they're going to turn those countries into Afghanistan.
But you see, the children they are giving,
Won't that be interesting?
the children they are giving birth to in those countries, because it's very easy for me to migrate to another country, hold true to the values of that country until I have my kids and raise them in a different culture. So when these kids grow up, most of them are not going to have the 8 kids like their parents had, because they're going to have another culture. And also, even if they are to do that, at the end of the day, my question is this: is it wrong to have children, to be a wife, and to have an education? Because you can still be at home and maybe running an online business and maybe doing something. You don't have to.
That's
go
what
to
I'm saying.
an
I feel like.
space,
Do you not
but
think
you still have an education? You're
that's
not
why I'm saying that
illiterate.
I'm actually seeing an opportunity here. So that even if you were a supporter of girl-child education, like if that's your thing, I feel like there's an opportunity here to circumnavigate the government ban and find new and innovating ways in which girls can be educated without being under the the authority of the government or the Taliban, who would prevent you from attending classes in a school.
But if you have watched,
Are they going to come to your house and say,
yes.
why does she have a laptop?
Yes, if you have watched documentaries about the Taliban, I like the documentaries made by Al Jazeera, because sometimes I feel like it's a bit leveled compared to Western media. And you realize that education, especially Western education for the Taliban, is unacceptable. And this is like a totalitarian society. If they say no education, and you are found to be doing this, you're going to have massive shootings as punishment, or for people being made examples of for, going against the government order. And this is something that has happened before.
So they'd go house to house to see if you're reading books,
yes,
or if you have a computer.
I remember reading a book. It's a fictitious book, but rooted in events that happened in real time. It's called The Kite Runner. This guy came from Afghanistan, but there is a time they had a war around in the 70s, and apparently they would come to a home and take away books. They would take away radios. They took over the national radio, so that the only thing transmitted was something that comes from the government. So they can still do it.
It's so strange, because just their neighboring country, they've had a female president or prime minister.
Pakistan.
Yes.
They had
Benazir
Bhutto, the one that was assassinated.
Yeah, but I'm just wondering, for a culture that is so closely connected, neighboring countries literally, on one hand, they don't even want the girls to go to school. On the other hand, they're happy to let a woman be a prime minister.
Yeah, but you see that...
I just don't get it.
The Taliban are what they call fanatics, because other Muslim countries... Recently, a friend of mine who works in somewhere in Iraq, told me that Iraq has a Christian side where you can even find pork. I'd never heard of that. I never thought that it could be possible. But apparently some of them are fanatics, and then others are just Zen Muslims, because even Muslims, they have levels.
There's levels to the fanaticism. There's level 2 and there's level 11. Taliban, they're at level 15.
Oh, gosh.
Apparently.
No, I think Taliban are like now... which terrorist group did Osama bin Laden belong to? Al-Qaeda. So for me, when I hear Taliban, I hear Al-Qaeda, I hear Al-Shabaab here in East Africa. They're that extreme.
Wow. And is it true that ADF are somehow tied to these groups? They have similar ideas? The ADF rebels that are operating in Western Uganda and Eastern Congo?
Government has tried to link them. I don't know if there is substantive truth to that, but the government has tried to link them to a degree. So
if they ever came to power, they might try the same thing here too, huh?
Wow.
And that'll be a sad day. But anyway, so to Afghanistan, well, I don't know. So is this a reason as to why America should have stayed in Afghanistan?
That's a whole other story.
Have women been betrayed by Joe Biden?
Honestly speaking, the minute Americans left, women were worried that some things, because when the Americans left, salons were told to close. Women that had key government positions were told to stop working.
Go home.
Like many
Make
of
dinner
them,
for your husband.
yeah, most of them don't work now. They were told to stand down. That's why some of them tried so much to leave. You remember the scuffle that was at the airport. Many of
People
them didn't
clinging
want
to the airplanes.
Exactly. They didn't want to stay behind because they knew what was coming for them.
Wow. Okay, so I don't know, man. It just seems like they're caught up in a time capsule in Afghanistan, and you know,
Man,
if you want a quick history lesson on what the Stone Age might have looked like, Afghanistan might be Exhibit A.
Oh my
or not
goodness.
far from it. But keep listening to the Fatboy Show. It's your number one station, RX Radio.